welcome everybody. Thanks for coming to this session. I'm looking forward to it. I've been talking to Audra a little bit, and she's got a lot of experience in this topic, so it's going to be great. Audra Kirch is a product and a project manager with Next company at this moment, and they specialize in organizational design and product launch, focus on technical and non-technical issues. She described herself as being highly motivated, resourceful, and has a lot of experience in project management and operations. Also has a lot of background in marketing research, analytics, agile methodologies, and a degree in communication studies. So her view is that it's important to take a strong, holistic approach to problem solving, creating solutions that users absolutely love, and using outcome-based roadmap strategies. And with that, I'd like to introduce Audra.
Thanks so much for the introduction, John. And yes, I'm here with you to talk about shiny things, bringing direction to your team through objectives and key results. Like John mentioned, I am a product manager and project manager with Next. A little bit more about myself. I've got a history of working in both nonprofit and healthcare business development. That, along with my passion for solving user problems and uniting teams through that data-driven process improvement, is essentially what got me into software product management. I'm also an avid traveler, backcountry hiker, skier, and also own 2 concessions at the Minnesota State Fair, which unfortunately we couldn't have this year. Would love to get to know a little bit more about yourself. So John's going to launch a poll here. If you would just share what size company you're coming from. My background is actually more so in the 100 to 200 range employees. So that's the context that I'll be speaking through. And I'll end the poll here. So it looks like only we've got both from the 100 to 500 and some in the over 1,000 employee range. So that'll be a great way to get us started here. Want to dive into the context that we'll be working through in our time together. We'll first talk through what are objectives and key results, why we would use objective and key results, what context we would use objective and key results within, and then jumping into our workshop time together, recapping our time with some of those best practices. So first, what are our objectives and key results? Objectives are those longer-lived, kind of North Star-like goals that our team has set for ourselves. They're sometimes used in the context of a year or longer, but sometimes just defined within a quarterly basis and then refined slightly in that quarter-to-quarter time frame. Now, key results are those elements that kind of help define and benchmark, monitor how we actually get to that objective and if we've accomplished it or not. They are typically very specific, time-bound. They are aggressive and yet realistic and accomplishable. We'll dive into those, of course, a little bit more, and of course, quite measurable. So why would we be using objectives and key results? Oftentimes we're hoping to increase that transparency. Companies might be coming from different perspectives. Maybe marketing has this focus that they're going after, and it doesn't exactly align with where product and development is going, or sales. So really these objectives, this North Star that we're defining together, is what's going to bring that cohesion to our team across the board. It's also a great communication tool. So when you have those different priorities, it helps making decision-making a lot easier for your teams. If there's that shiny thing, that new fad that you just have to go after, that might actually bring a lot of value to your company, to your team, but it's not focusing in on that true objective or key result that will help you attain that objective, it's a lot easier to have the conversation with your team or that specific individual that it's maybe not something that we should be pursuing at this time. It also is a way to track the progress and the increase efficiency of our team. Having those better defined smaller steps of key results will help us be able to track that progress and in turn our efficiency of work that we are accomplishing. So when I think of objectives and how we would attain product roadmaps, OKRs are really that successful way to accomplish outcome-driven roadmaps. And I'll talk through how I've been able to accomplish that in the past. Within that context of quarterly planning within a smaller company, we've in the past set forth to accomplish a retrospective. And so that's really thinking about what we've done in the past and how we've done that well, or maybe areas that we can be improving. Have leadership define those objectives, understanding where at a very high level we need to be within the market, what big next steps we need to accomplish as a company, and then pass those objectives to the team. That would be defining key results, and how the team would define key results would be through that 2x2 value matrix, understanding what we're hearing from our customers, what are these next features that we might be having to release to meet the needs and demands of our customers. Putting that in the 2x2 matrix and understanding that the items that have the most value, the least level of effort from our team is what we're wanting to start to pursue. And taking those features, defining what measurements of success would look like and how we would define key results to support them, and in turn supporting those objectives. Now, hopefully we've accomplished and defined very specific and like really big picture, achievable yet big, hairy goals that we've set for ourselves within that time. And so then we'd want to assess that risk assessment and mitigation, and then move forward and applying that to our roadmap. So now we're gonna take some time to dig in and apply this to our specific companies. And if you have some Post-it notes, that would be ideal. Paper is fantastic as well, and a pen will dive in. I also, if you've been able to kind of start to connect with people in the direct chat, we will eventually be going into some time of providing feedback for one another and the objectives that we've defined. So if you haven't already connected with someone specifically, please do so you have that person to both provide feedback for and vice versa in just a few minutes here. All right, so when we first think about objectives, again, just to recap, we want that long-lived, something that might roll over year after year, that North Star that our company is focusing on. That's a great context to be putting into mind, is what is our mission and vision, and how in these next 90 days, for the context of this workshop, would success look like for our time together. So in this context, I'll provide kind of an example based on our workshop here. My objective is to provide a meaningful way for you to improve your operating excellence within the next 30 minutes. So that gives the context of time, but it's very that high level context and a goal that we have. So for this first exercise, we're going to go into a brain dump exercise. Following this, we'll give you a little opportunity to refine those objectives and then provide feedback to one another. But for this portion right now, we'll give you 2 minutes to write down as many objectives as you can think on, ideally 1 Post-it note per objective. And what this allows you to do is not overthink your wording, reduce your judgment of yourself, of the ideas that you're putting out, but get as many ideas out as you're able to. So I'm going to start the timer now and give you 2 minutes. All right, that marks our 2-minute mark. Hopefully you got some great objectives out there. Now what we're going to do is take those objectives that we've brain dumped, and we're going to group them together into those valuable higher level objectives or themes that we are seeing. Now this might be where you see that some of the language that you chose wasn't super ideal. You can take that time to, once you've grouped those themes together and identified the 3 most specific overarching objectives that you're wanting to pursue with your team, and refine that language. So I'm going to set the time again and give you another 2 minutes to refine your language. Again, the next step that we'll have is to find that specific partner and kind of share and provide feedback for one another. All right, 2 minutes starting now. All right, we're at that 2-minute mark. So hopefully you found an individual to connect with on the chat. And we're gonna move into 2 minutes of gaining some feedback from that individual. Now the idea here is as you verbalize your objectives, you are refining them, you're putting forth some of those ideas, and hopefully this person, you can ask these questions as some place to start. Is this objective meaningful? Is it audacious? Is it inspiring? Is it going to help you get to your company's vision in this next period of time? So if you've not already found it, you can certainly share in the group chat what your company vision and objectives are, those key 3 objectives that you've defined, and get some feedback. We're going to take 2 minutes for that. All right, hopefully you were able to get some great feedback from the other participants. When we think about our objectives, and one great quote that I've come across is striving for success without this hard work is like trying to harvest where you haven't planted. And I think that same concept goes in line with, if we have not defined what our measurement for success, what our goals are, it's that same way that we're going to have a failure in actually trying to harvest what we have not planted. So now is when we are wanting to take those objectives and see how we can define some key results that will help us achieve those objectives. When we are starting to think about those key results, we're wanting to define those milestones or metrics that are going to be that impactful way to move the needle forward in achieving that objective. Some ideas, some examples of providing those key results might be improving a monthly active user by a certain %, increasing something from X to Y, reducing a percentage annually, maybe achieving a certain NPS score. What we're wanting to do in this is not focus on the activities, not focusing on features, initiatives, but focusing on the outcomes themselves. And why we want to do that is you might have been in a place before where maybe COVID hit and you have to pivot. There's things that we come across in our work that are just unexpected. And so if we're focusing on those outcomes and not how we achieve the outcomes, that's allowing us to say that we're able to pivot, and it's not a negative, right? We're able to change how we accomplish those outcomes without being penalized by maybe leadership or feeling negative about our approach. That those types of things happen. But if we're still focusing on the outcome and not how we achieve the outcome, that's going to be where our savior is. So with the example provided, when we think about that meaningful way to improve your operating excellence in the next 30 minutes, we want to finish the session on time. That's one of my key results. I want to get a 4+ rating from each attendee on the drafts that you've provided on your OKRs. One thing I want to highlight with that key result is we don't have a way to measure that right now. So going into this time of defining your key results, you don't have to necessarily have a way to achieve it right now, but make a note of that. This is a next step that I'm going to have to achieve and accomplish, defining how I actually will identify that this metric has been met and be able to measure it. That I also want to have as a key result that 100% of the participants leave with at least one tactical tip to apply to their teams. Again, need a way to measure that, but that's something that, again, as we are diving into actually defining these key results for each of you, that it's something you might have to do and spend a little time to take away and understand what maybe it is that industry standard is or what your baselines are. Notate that, but don't overthink that as we're going into this exercise right now. We're going to take 2 minutes, and this will be a little bit shorter of an exercise than the last. And then just taking time to start with one objective to give you some time to hone in on that most important objective and define 3 to 5 time-bound, measurable key results. And that will be able to allow you to define what that clear measurement of success is to accomplish your objective. All right, we're going to go into 2 minutes, give you some time to jump into that, and we'll come back into you. All right, hopefully we've got some great key results. Now, next steps for these objectives and key results that you've defined. Continue to refine those key results for the other objectives and take it back to the rest of your team and see if you can get some feedback on those as well. All right, going into just some of the best practices that we've thought about and reviewed so far, we are going to want to co-create these OKRs. We're going to want to work with our teams, work with leadership, have a collaboration that is shared across the board. We're going to want to make them smart. We're going to want to make that specific, measurable. We're going to want to make it attainable, as well as relevant to our team and the space that we're in right now as a company, and time bound. We're going to be focusing on those outcomes, not the outputs, not the activities or features that we're focusing on and need to accomplish within the next period of time. And we're also going to want to, one thing I hadn't dove too much into is when we're creating these key results, creating a grading scale that is helpful to say we maybe not met our goal 100%. Say if it's 100% that we wanted to achieve on something, 70 to 100% is actually quite common to be seen as an acceptable completion of one of these objectives. That 40 to 60% is, you know, you made some really great progress that allows there to be a reward still in this completion of objectives and key results. And at the below 40%, that's we've not really met our mark, and we really need to reassess in our next retrospective of what we can be doing differently to achieve or better define these objectives and key results. And finally, what objectives and key results are, as mentioned in the beginning, is that something that we should be discussing on a regular basis to be that mark of how far have we progressed to achieving that North Star and accomplishing our goals here. Couple resources that I'd like to leave you with are some really beneficial tools that I've used in the past to measure what matters from John Doerr. There's both a book and website that are super beneficial. That's my top recommendation. Another couple of resources out there, Elegant Hack has both OKRs and how you might be applying that to high performing teams. 7 Geese utilizes OKRs and some of that 360 feedback within leadership, as well as the OKR podcasts if you're podcast people. Wanted to thank you all for joining me today and talking about how you can improve your objectives and key results or apply them to your teams. I'm happy to discuss further with you. Certainly connect with me on LinkedIn if you want to run some of your OKRs past me or discuss further. Always excited to join in on that. Thank you all. Any closings, John?
Well, Audra, I have one question here, and we've got about 2 minutes left in the session. So it's from Maggie, and she says, have you ever run into an issue where the different objectives are the same thing from opposite places?
Maybe if you can provide me a little more context there, Maggie, if you've got a specific example. I think oftentimes if there is an objective, it might be phrased in different ways, but the nice thing is those key results can help support in different, whether it be two different departments coming with an idea of how to accomplish a goal. I think the context that I've seen is sometimes a company has that overarching objective and different teams might support that objective with the different key results. So a company objective might be, we want to reduce spending, and two different teams might approach that in different ways and provide their key results of how they would support that reduction, if that helps.
Well, Audra, thank you so much. I found that really helpful myself. I've got a whole page of notes here. I think we've run out of time, but and I don't know if this session will end automatically or not. So I'll hang on for another few minutes in case it doesn't and somebody wants to stay on. Feel free. But other than that, thanks everybody for coming, and thanks so much, Audra, for sharing your expertise.
Absolutely. Thank you all for joining again.